What's up, guys? C Matador here again with another heads up poker match. So, a couple things before we get started. One, just by the way I was recording last time, it only had the window instead of the region. So now you should be able to see the HUD stats that I had up. And also, in the last video, there were some instances where either Gnarus or myself appeared to have the button two hands in a row. That's because using the hotkey to go through the replayer will skip hands where the big blind just gets a walk. So that's why that was happening. So if you haven't seen the video for the first match, I definitely recommend checking that out because that is going to weigh into how this second match goes. So while Gnarus is definitely on the passive side, I expect a little more aggression this time, as she definitely ramped up the aggression as she appeared to get tilted towards the end of the first match. So let's just jump right into it. So we start with Jack Deuce suited. We end up getting a walk. 5-6, I'm opening for a min raise. So as I explained in the last one, my open raise sizing is going to be determined by how much of an edge I think I have. After the last game, I think that I definitely have a good edge against Gnarus, so now I'm just going to be open min raising the entire time. We get called. This isn't really a good flop to be c-betting, but at the same time we don't really have any equity, so if I'm going to bluff with anything, this might be a decent hand to do it with. But I think I'm going to end up checking, and I do. The turn, now we pick up a gut shot, but I think once I check the flop, I think my plan is to just kind of give up. I don't see myself betting here if I didn't bet the flop. I check again. Queen's an interesting card. It puts 4 to a straight on the board. And Gnarus checks a third time. And I think, while I don't really have too many jacks in my range in this spot, checking twice, I think after Gnarus checks 3 times, her hand is going to be extremely weak and very hard to call a bet. Just turn my sound off here. And given that I have 6 high, I think a bet is pretty much mandatory right now. So I decided to make a little half pot bet. This doesn't really need to work all that often. And we end up getting a fold. (8-5), Gnarus limps, and we just check. Lead out, flopping middle pair. I think there are a lot of weaker hands I can call. Ace high, king high, spade draws. But we just win immediately. 9-8 suited, pretty good hand to raise, and Gnarus 3 bets. We haven't really seen her do this at all in the first match. The only time she was 3-betting was 3-betting all in after losing some big pots. It only cost me 60 more to call, and there's 180 in the pot already. So I'm definitely going to be seeing a flop here, especially having position and pretty deep stacks. Jack 3-5. We don't really, we missed this board pretty hard, so I don't see myself continuing. And she bets about 3/4 pot. And here I'm just going to fold. The beauty of having such good pot odds, as I had 3-1 to see the flop, meaning that I need 25% equity. I don't need to win the pot that often to make that call profitable. So I can afford to just fold in a spot like this. I don't have to turn my hand into a bluff or do anything fancy. when I miss. I think 9-8 suited is actually going to connect with the board enough that I can pretty much continue when I hit and not continue when I miss. So I think this is just an easy fold here. 7 deuce off, we just get a walk. 9-5 suited, I'm going to raise. I think I'm going to be raising any suited cards from the button. We get a fold. 6-2, I'm just going to check. I decided to check this. I would have liked to see myself lead out here with my gut shot. The 6 high really doesn't have any showdown value. But since I checked and Gnarus decides to bet 2.5 times the pot, not going to do anything here. King Jack's going to be an open. And we flopped the nut straight. Given the connectivity of this board, with the flush draw, I think there's a lot of hands that can call a bet here. I can get called by diamonds. I can get called by gut shots like 8-9, a jack, a king, and some of those hands, if they're more connected, will have pairs too, like 10-jack or king-10, queen-jack. I also don't think an ace is going to fold. So I think there's a lot of merit to just betting now and just going for 3 streets rather than trying to be tricky. I think a common misconception is when you flop the nuts or a really strong hand that you have to slow play it. Sometimes it can be better to slow play, but I think in this spot there are enough hands that can call me that I think betting now is the best way to go. So I make a bet. I make a larger bet than normal because as I said, there are a lot of hands that can continue, so I want to definitely start building a pot here. Unfortunately, we get a fold, but I still like the play. 10-4 off, she opens for 4x, we're just going to fold. King-Queen going to raise. Jack-5 off, we just get a walk. Going to open the Queen-6 suited. We get 3-bet again. Again, this is a really small 3-bet. I'm getting 3-1. Getting 3-1 in position, I'm pretty much going to be calling almost my entire range. There are very few hands that I would fold for this, given that we're playing almost 100 blinds deep. If stacks were shallow, I would fold some hands, or if the raise was bigger, like had Gnarus raised to 180 or 200, I would definitely be folding the Queen-6 here, but for another 60 chips, I think I have enough equity to call here. Again, we don't really, again we miss, but I think on a board like this, I would expect Gnarus to be betting a lot. So I take this check as a little bit suspicious. It could be a check with a hand like ace high. It could be an overpair. But the point is, I don't think she's checking to just give up necessarily. So I think I'm going to check. I think the plan is going to be the check to flop and see what happens on the turn. If she doesn't bet the turn, depending on what the turn card is, unless it's a really bad turn card, I plan on taking a stab at it on the turn. Because even people slow playing have to build a pot at some point. So if she fails to bet the turn, I think I'm going to take a stab at it. Otherwise, if she bets, I'm probably just going to fold unless I improve somehow. We get a jack, and she does bet. So my guess is that she either checked back a hand like ace-jack or king-jack, or had a really big hand, decided to try to slow play it. Here we get ace-jack, but we just get a walk. Jack-4 suited, gonna raise. Here's a really dry flop. I'm just going to probably bet now and take it down a large majority of the time. And here I only bet 60 compared to the ace queen 10 flop from earlier where I bet 80. Here this board is so dry. Unless Gnarus has an 8, a deuce, or some type of overcard hand that she wants to start calling down with, there's really nothing that connects with this board, so I don't need to bet a lot to get her to fold her air. So in general, betting smaller on these dry flops is going to be a better play, and betting larger on draw heavy boards is going to be better. We get another walk, so she's been giving us quite a few walks. So I'm definitely going to give her raises credit. King 10, going to open. Here we get 3-bet to 360, so here she makes a really large 3-bet, perhaps trying to adjust to the fact that I was peeling her small 3-bets. And if she made it 120, I would have definitely called again. But for 360, I'm just going to fold this hand. 9-7, we get to see a free flop. We don't really connect with it too well. We have a backdoor straight draw, backdoor flush draw. She bets twice the pot, so we're just going to fold. I think the key to winning this match is just going to be to find good spots to get value and not to do anything too tricky. She plays passive enough where she's really not going to put a lot of pressure on me, so I don't need to make high risk plays. Ace 9 is going to be an open, and we just win the pot. 9-4 again, just going to check, and just going to check this one. We turn a 9, but that doesn't really do much for us. We're still behind any real piece of the board. I just want to try to take this to showdown, so I'm going to check, and she bets, and I just don't even really see a point in calling a bet here. It's a very small pot. 7-4 suited, going to open, and now she's back to the small 3-bet again. So I'm going to peel this one as well, getting 3-1. And we get an interesting flop. We get Queen Jack 7, all clubs. So we flop bottom pair, and she checks. So what kinds of hands could she be checking? Well, I think a lot of hands that are checking here are going to be hands that don't have a club. Maybe 2 9s or 2 10s, 8s, a 7, maybe some kind of ace jack, king jack with no club. Maybe ace king with no club. Ace 10. Some of these hands maybe even have 1 club in them. Although I would think that she would bet hands that have the ace of clubs. It's possible she could check maybe like Jack 10 with the 10 of clubs. I think that would actually be a pretty good check. I think she's checking these sort of medium strength hands and also checking hands planning to give up. So what I want to do here is I'm going to try to put some pressure on her on this board, because I think if she flopped a really strong hand like an ace queen or kings or aces or those hands with a high club, I think she'd be trying to put pressure on me to build the pot. She's shown that she can get aggressive in this match so far, so I want to try to put some pressure on her here. So I'm going to bet the flop. And I'm probably going to bet a little larger given the coordination of the board. And this is not to be clear, like I'm turning my bottom pair into a bluff here. I really don't want to get called when I bet. But when I do bet, I also have to think about if I'm going to continue betting on turns and rivers. I think I'm planning on following up the turn a fair amount here, and depending on the river, maybe even bluffing the river as well. As I think it's going to be really hard for her to show up with a hand that she's really going to be excited about putting all the money in with. So I start by betting 200, which I think I even could have gone bigger than this. I would have liked to see maybe like 240, 250 to really sell the idea of having flopped a big hand. And we get called. So I'm pulling out. So obviously she doesn't have a check give up hand. We get the deuce, which is a total brick. And we get check 2 again. Now, while I don't think she's slow playing very often, I think if she is slow playing, we're probably going to find out about it at this point if we bet again. And I also, as I said, I really just want to try to apply pressure on her medium strength hands. If I had a flush here, or like ace queen with the ace of clubs, or a king 10 with the king of clubs, if I had some kind of strong draw, strong hand, I would continue barreling here. So I need to have some bluffs to do that with. And I think, well, now it's not bottom pair anymore, but this hand functions decently as a bluff as well. And because I have some equity when I get called. Sometimes I'm getting called by ace king with a club here, and I'm actually ahead. Sometimes I can improve to 2 pair or trips and win the pot that way. So I think all that makes this a decent candidate to bluff with. I do bet again, and I get called. And we get another brick river. She checks again. And I think here, this is pretty interesting. I mean, I have a couple different options. I can make another half pot bet. I can make an overbet shove for about 1.4 times the pot. Or I can just give up. Checking back, I concede the pot to her medium strength hands, but I win against missed draws. The overbet, obviously, the overbet is going to have the most fold equity. However, of course, if I'm wrong, then I lose the match immediately. Half pot will leave me with about 1,400 chips or so, which at 20-40, I'll still have 30, 35 big blinds, so I can still work with that. I think in game, it really boils down to what I think she's going to do with a hand like king queen or queen 10 if I think she's going to fold it. And my impression that I got, maybe through, because I don't remember exactly how long she took to call the flop and turn, but my impression was that I just didn't feel like she was ready to make a big fold against me. And that's maybe an argument for not trying to run this bluff in the first place. But I just think it was a really good spot to. So I think I'm just going to check this back and hope that I beat some of her missed draws, her 10-9s, king 10s, ace kings, those kinds of hands. So I do check, and she shows up with ace 10, no club, which I think is a pretty light peel on the flop and the turn. I don't really know how I feel about. I mean, I definitely think the turn call is a blatant mistake. The flop call is still kind of iffy with one over and a gut shot. I mean, I can have a lot of hands with a club in it. She's not going to have that many outs against a lot of my range. But good for us to pick up a nice pot. So moving on, next hand we get raised with 8 deuce. Not going to do anything. Jack 8 we raise, get called. We flop top pair and we get led into for 3/4 pot. So this is one of those flops with the middling cards that favors a calling range. And I don't think people generally bluff this type of board all that often. However, with top pair, this is too strong of a hand to consider folding at this point. I would need a really good read that she would only lead out with monsters for me to consider folding this hand. I don't think raising is going to be good, though. I think if we raise, we open up the chance to get three bet all in by a strong draw or a better made hand, like a bigger jack or 2 pair. So I think the play right now is to just call. Oops. Queen's interesting. We turn a gut shot. I don't really love this card because a lot of Gnarus's possible draws, open-enders like King Queen, Queen 9, 9 8, all improve. The only hands that really miss this turn are maybe like 7 9. That's really it. We still have a decent hand. We have, second pair. And we get led into, again, fairly large, just under 3/4. It's about 70% pot. This is kind of close, actually. I think when she bets on this card, though, it's a little more polarizing, considering that the queen sort of changes the board texture a little bit significantly, that a lot of hands improve. And I can also have a lot of queens in my range, which makes me kind of want to fold. So when you're looking at calling or folding to a bet, what you want to think of is what your own range looks like in this spot. And if you're at the top of your range, then you more often want to call, and if you're at the bottom of your range, you more often want to fold. So I could consider folding Jack 8 if I could think of a lot of better hands that I would have here. And I think Jack 8 is more towards the bottom end. Again, I think it's kind of close. Because I can have Ace Queen, Ace King, King Queen, Queen 10, Queen Jack, 8 9. King Jack would be a little bit better here. Like, all these hands are in my range that I would play this way, raise pre-flop and then call the flop. So I have a lot of better hands in my range in this spot than Jack 8. So I think, while it's close, I think this hand might be a fold. Though in heads up, it's really hard to get rid of top pair. It's just kind of hard for her to. I mean, she could just be spazzing out with some spades. Could be betting a 10. I would like to see myself fold, but I can't. I don't think it's a huge mistake if I end up calling. I do call. We river a straight, although the bottom end, a king makes a higher straight. She bets again this time 1/3 pot. So this seems like a blocker bet. I think she's going to have a lot of 2 pairs here, and maybe also an 8. I don't think we can really raise for value. I don't think we really get called by worse. I mean, an 8 is definitely going to call. I don't know if I get called by 1 pair or 2 pair if I raise the river. So I think I'm just going to end up calling here. And she shows up with 9-7 offsuit. So I think we got really lucky in this spot to run into essentially the only bluffing hand that didn't improve on the queen turn. So this was a nice one, and now we built up a lead. Now we have a 3-1 chip lead. So we get another walk, the ace-8 suited. 9-5 off. I decided to give her a walk here for 2 reasons. I mean, one, 9-5 off is a pretty weak hand, although I can think of weaker hands. Like, I normally wouldn't fold 9-5 off. I would normally probably give a walk with something like Jack-Deuce offsuit, Queen-3 offsuit, or 10-3 offsuit. 9-5 is connected enough that I think it's playable. However, I think after those last 2 hands, if you guys remember from the first match, she might be ready to go into 3-bet jam mode again. And I'm kind of expecting that. So I don't want to open a super marginal hand like this. So I'm just going to give her a walk. And so here we go already. She now is raising to 11 times the big blind. So I think the tilt is setting back in. So at this point, we just need to be patient and pick up a strong hand, or find a good spot to trap her. 7-8 suited. I'm still going to open this, and we get jammed on. So even though she has 40 big blinds, we're getting jammed on. So we're just going to have to adjust to that. Jack-5, not going to do anything here. Even after rivering a 5, I think just going to check this down, try to take the showdown. And we end up getting lucky to win against ace high. Again, Jack-6 off. Given that now she's shoving, she's starting to shove, I'm just gonna fold this right away and just save myself the 60 chips. Jack-8 suited, though I would like to see a flop. I'm not gonna see a flop for 240. I think that's just too much to call. King-9, I'm gonna open. This time she only makes it 120, so I'm probably going to call this. We get a pretty good flop open-ended. Ends up checking through, with the turn being a 6. I think a lot of my calling range pre-flop is going to hit this, and with Jack-8, I'm pretty much at the bottom of my range, having Jack-high. So this is a really this is a good candidate for me to turn my hand into a bluff, because I don't really have showdown value. I expect Gnarus to have overcards, and on the board disconnected, I think she's going to give up a lot of the time. So I want to see myself make a bet here, and I check, which I think is a mistake. She bets half pot. We're getting 3-1, so we need 25% equity to call. A 7 is going to make us, I think a 7 is going to make us the best hand most of the time. And a queen is going to make us the best hand. So we have 8 outs to a straight. A jack is probably going to be good as well. So 11 outs. Maybe I'll only count 10. To say some of the time when we hit a jack, it's not good. That gives us about a little over 20%. Still not quite enough. That's why I would have liked to see myself bluff. I mean, even though I have a lot of outs, I think I'm not really getting the right price. And to give myself a better price, I want to give myself some ability to win the pot without improving my hand. I do call, which I don't really love. And we end up, this is exactly the reason why I wanted to turn my hand into a bluff. We really should have been able to win this pot against queen high here. Because if we bet, even if the turn bet gets called, she's not really going to be able to call a river bet with queen high. So I think this was a pretty clear mistake. Jack 5 suited. I'm going to open. I don't want to be too passive. Unfortunately, we get 3-bet. Interestingly enough, this is a 3-bet not all in. So I'm actually a little bit more worried about this bet than if she had just shoved. Either way, not going to be continuing with Jack 5. Ace 8, we get raised. I'm going to defend this hand for sure. Queen 9-3. We check, and she checks back. I expect her to have a lot of hands that don't connect with this board, like ace high, king high, maybe just some random cards, maybe a gut shot. I don't really expect her to have too much, though. 5 of hearts turn. I think my hand is strong enough to try to check down and go for showdown. I don't think I really need to bluff here. And I could potentially catch some bluffs. She bets 100. Really small bet, a third of the pot. And I think I have enough showdown value to call and reevaluate the river. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I do call. We river an 8. I don't really think there's a need to bet. I don't know if we necessarily get called by worse. And I don't think a 9 is folding if I bet. So I think I just want to check and give her the opportunity to bet. It's very possible she could have a hand with 1 heart here. Maybe even like ace, maybe like ace X with the ace of hearts. She does bet, and I think for the same reasons I need to call the river that I called the turn. I think she has enough bluffs in her range to call here with third pair. And she ends up having ace 5. I think the way she played it is pretty standard. I think it's okay. It's check back the flop, bet the turn for protection. I really don't think the river bet was necessary. I don't think I'm really. I mean, it's iffy. I mean, I was considering calling down with ace high, so I don't really hate the river bet. Whereas if the 8 didn't come on the river, I was probably going to call, and she was going to make a nice value bet. King 6, I end up folding. I think that probably should have been a raise. So I think if she wasn't on tilt yet, I think now definitely we get raised to 300. Just going to fold. Pick up pocket kings, and of course we don't get shoved on because that's just how it works. 7-4, we get raised. Ace 4, I'm going to raise, and we just win. And pocket 8s, which makes it 350. So this is a little bit interesting. She has 30 big blinds here. I think just given how aggressive she has just been playing in the last maybe 10 hands or so, I think 8s are just too strong to fold. I also think that there are a lot of bad flops. You know, there are a lot of flops with overcards. So if I'm gonna play, basically my options are between folding and just getting it in. And I think eights are just too strong. So I'm just gonna shove and get it in. I expect to be good here a lot. And she ends up having ace king, so we're flipping. And even if I lose this pot, we're even. So losing a flip isn't the biggest deal. So I have a decent chance to end the match right here. Good flop for us, even though she flops a gut shot. We turn a set, which is really nice because now we can only lose 2 or 3 on the river and no 3s, so we end up winning the second match. So it was definitely interesting to see how she turned up the aggression a lot in this second game. And it just goes to show you that just heads up is a very opponent-specific game. There's a lot of metagame that goes into it, a lot of game flow. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I'm gonna try to make some more recordings more often. The plan so far is to try to record some hands that I play live, find a way to get them into the replayer and go over them too, because I don't really play too much online, at least not for significant stakes. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time.